Hello there. Welcome back to the Countdown to Ironman Lake Placid video series. My name is Joe from Endurance Mentors. And today we're going to provide a little bit of a follow-up conversation from our last video, which was more specific information about the Ironman Lake Placid bike course. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about strategy tips for executing really any Ironman bike leg. First, though, I just want to say just a quick thank you. After the last video, lots of great feedback, lots of great comments. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the positivity. And I also had a great chance to connect with a few athletes and really just impressed by everybody's preparation and how far they've come ahead of this race, and had some great conversations. Felt like I was able to answer some good questions. So thanks so much for that. And as just a reminder, I mentioned it in the last video, but I'll say it again here. We do offer what we call mentorship sessions, which are basically a la carte coaching sessions. And the first one is always free. So for anybody that's viewing this, if we haven't worked together in the past, you can certainly request a mentorship session either by clicking the link in the description of this video, or you can go to any of our blogs, which will also be in the description. Scroll down to the bottom. On the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see a button that says Request Mentorship Session. Click on it, and you can very quickly get to us. And then what we'll do is schedule a time to connect with you as soon as possible. We try to turn them around fast for you. So get us on a Zoom or a Teams or even just a phone call, and we're happy to help you any way we can. We really believe in the endurance lifestyle, and we'd love to see athletes succeeding. So I hope many of you reach out. We would love to connect. All right, so today we are talking a little bit more about strategy. And in particular, this blog post that we wrote outlines 3 specific strategy tips, which I definitely think are the top things that you need to keep in mind to execute a successful Ironman bike leg. First and foremost, I want to talk about keeping a positive attitude, okay? Throughout training, we focus on the physical, right? Day in, day out, are we hitting our miles, our time? We talk about physical things all the time. We rarely, though, talk about the mental challenges that every athlete goes through during an Ironman bike leg. This is incredibly taxing, both physically, but also mentally. There will be setbacks during the bike leg. It is a guarantee. I think this year's Ironman Lake Placid will be my 7th time around the course. Every single bike leg has something different that's new and challenging. And I can tell you right now, the best thing to do is to just keep a positive attitude, and an attitude that, number 1, expects challenges, and then number 2, has a very clear-cut plan to stay positive and move past them. So expect them ahead of time. Don't go to the race day expecting everything to be perfect. It will not be perfect, I promise you. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but something is. And if you're mentally prepared for that, you're prepared to stay positive and deal with any issues as they arise, you will be in a much better position to stay present and to keep positive and to get through your Ironman bike leg successfully, which you'll be very happy about once you start running. All right, that's number 1. Number 2, I want to talk about managing what we call a goal intensity throughout the Ironman bike leg. So most athletes right now are using pieces of data, okay? They're using heart rate, they're using power, okay? And then we all like to keep in the back of our mind, what RPE, or rating of perceived exertion, are we kind of putting out throughout the Ironman bike so that we'll have enough energy left in the tank to go and run after this, okay? So talking about this just generally, determining your goal intensity is something that's really going to be identified through your training, okay? There are lots of different tests that you can do. If you're working with a coach, you most certainly have gone through some of this testing. You know where your zones are, either heart rate zones or power zones or both, okay? You know because you've been training in those zones all along. Well, on race day, you're going to have a prescribed heart rate or power zone to stick to throughout the race, or maybe different at different points, which is a little bit more of like a power strategy where you can kind of adjust depending on the ups and downs of the course, etc. But frankly, we're all going to have a specific target that we're shooting for. All right. Data, I always say this, data is great. And I do all my training with data, but I always like to keep in the back of my mind, what does this correlate to from an RPE standpoint? Because I've had multiple races now where I've lost access to my data midway through the race. We were up there training last weekend, and my heart rate monitor just died on me halfway through the ride. It happens, right? So be prepared to also go to RPE when you're talking about your race day intensity. And what I did here was outlined a little bit of what I have experienced, okay? Most athletes for the Ironman bike leg are going to be targeting an RPE of about 5 to 7, okay? This is going to be an intensity goal throughout the race. This is a spectrum, and this is different for every single athlete. So listen, you may fall on the below the lower end or above, the high end. Everyone's different. Frankly, if you know that you're out of this range, that's a good sign because it means that you've done the preparation and you know where your body's at. Okay, so I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to most people who are maybe a little bit grayer in where they belong on that race course. How intense should they be on the bike ride? So generally speaking, advanced athletes are going to be more towards maybe like a 6.5 or 7 out of 10 RPE. More beginner Ironman athletes, maybe this is your first race, you could be a 4.5, to a 5. So I'm just using this generally. And the way I like to think about your level of intensity is I like to think about that as, number one, your goal intensity. Let's say my goal intensity is a 5. I'm going to race an Ironman at a 5 out of 10, okay, for RPE. That'll correspond to a certain heart rate that I have, power, etc. But I like to think about that as like my floor, something to always return to. All right, we're going to be up in Ironman Lake Placid this year. A lot of hills. On those hills, I'm going to let my heart rate increase. I'm going to let my RPE increase as well as I'm climbing. But as I, crest the hill or as I'm finding, settling back in a flatter section, I'm going to always kind of come back to my floor goal intensity of, say, a 5. That would be for me personally. You may have something different. And that's where a coach can really be helpful because they can help you determine exactly what that is for you specifically as the athlete. All right. So from a strategic standpoint, you want to identify your goal intensity ahead of time, right? Through all your training. And then on race day, you want to have it identified and then make sure you're sticking to it. Do not have big swings up and over that level for large periods of time. All you're going to be doing is hurting yourself when you get to the run. Okay. All right. So that's intensity. Lastly, and the other big topic when it comes to the Ironman bike is keep fueling at the top of your mind. All right. The Ironman Lake Placid bike course specifically, a lot of undulations, a lot of changing terrain, etc. So it's easy to get kind of lost in it. And that's not just for Ironman Lake Placid. This is every Ironman. But fueling is as important as your intensity. You can hit your intensity levels perfectly. If you're not fueling, you're doing more damage to yourself. So for the bike ride, you need to make sure that you stay on top of your fueling. Number one, have a clear fueling strategy as you go into the race, okay? And then have a clear plan to execute that strategy from a fueling standpoint on race day. A lot of athletes get really creative with this, and this is great. Some of them set a timer on their watch. Every 15 minutes I'm gonna have this or that, or have a Clif Bar or a gel or whatever it may be. But most athletes are targeting about 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. That tends to be the rule of thumb. If you look at the professional fields now, they're actually going even further above that. But quite frankly, you have to train your gut to just take in 90 grams of carbs per hour anyway. So from an age group perspective, you only have so many long rides that you can do ahead of the race. Really try to train yourself up to that up to that 90 mark, and obviously figure this out for yourself. You may do better with a little bit more, a little bit less, but still, even if you're above 80 grams of carbs per hour, that ends up being quite a bit of nutritional intake and requires a specific plan so that you can execute on the bike. All right. So, number one, keep a positive attitude, right? We talked about it. Stay positive. That'll help you throughout the entire bike ride as challenges arise. Number two, stay on top of your intensity. Know where you are, okay, from an intensity standpoint. Stick to it. And again, think of it as a floor, something that you're always going to come back to. Your intensity levels will vary, but always come back to that floor. That's kind of your home base for the ride, okay? And then number three, focus on your fueling. Make sure you have a clear-cut fueling strategy. Do not deviate from it, and make sure that you're setting yourself up for a successful run. The bike is long. I went through the course last week, but this applies really to any Ironman. You should keep these three strategy tips in mind because they really will set you up for a more successful run. All right, thank you all so much. The next video in this series, we're going to move on to the run course. We'll do a kind of a recap of the run course specifically that we had a chance to get on last weekend. And then we'll do something very similar to this, which will be kind of a higher level run course strategy video as well. Thank you all so much. Again, if we can help, we had some great conversations with athletes this week. Request a mentorship session. Again, you can find that in the description of this video or just by clicking this button right here on the blog post, which will also be linked in the description. And we hope we get a chance to meet you. Thanks so much, everyone.